Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Grumpy Nostalgia, Second Look Cinema, the show where we go back to that blockbuster new release wall of your memories, take a copy off that shelf, pop it in the old VCR, and see what time has done to it. We are on episode 3, Mike.
Hooray!
And we have avoided the sophomore jinx.
Oh, yes, thank you.
like so many other failed attempts before us. What's your favorite example of a sophomore slump or a sophomore jinx, Mike, in the entertainment world?
I go to the great band Weezer, and their first album was fantastic. Everybody remembers the Blue album, Buddy Holly, all that stuff. Second album, Pinkerton, at the time, total dudsville, bombed. No one liked it, but I loved it, and it was one of those things that kind of a cult classic now. Everybody kind of like, oh, that album really wasn't that bad, but and one of the it cost them their producer. One of the guys left the group. It was somehow they came back from it, so they did fine.
How curious! I also have my favorite example is also a music related one, the Beastie Boys, Paul's Boutique, the second album. You remember how big the Beastie Boys were in the mid '80s, like frat boys and they were just all over the place, and they kind of freaked out with their fame and went back to LA and just recorded this, amazing collection of music that everybody hated. But now I think I like the redemption part of that story, because Paul's Boutique is generally considered one of the top 5 rock albums of all time.
That's the way it kind of works. It's like I love that phrase. You said freaked out by their fame, because I feel like that's what happens a lot of the time.
Yeah. So again, much like us, not appreciated in their time, Mike.
Years from now, people listen to this and say, "Wow,
yeah,
those guys." That second one about the Independence Day was pretty darn good.
Yeah. I don't at Paul's Boutique level, I don't know, but we'll find out. But speaking about movies, Mike, let's talk about some movies again. But before we start, I just want to thank everybody that continues to listen. We can now claim we are an international podcast, Mike. We have fans that span the globe.
Awesome.
But to our German listeners, thank you for listening. We were not expecting our American take on culture to be.
Oh wow, yes, I'm a big Bundesliga fan. So if we have anybody from the Deutschland listening, it warms the cockles of my heart.
Alles klar, yes. Yeah. But great. All right. So we're going to go back to the video store here, and we're going to, in lieu of recent events, we've got the Batman in theaters as we speak. I think we both saw it and we had our take on it, but we're not here to talk about the new Batman. We're here to talk about the original OG Batman, Michael.
Adam West.
Ooh, okay, you got me. All right. Who wanted to be in this movie, by the way, which I think is fantastic. At 60 years old, thought he was snubbed for the role. But we're talking about the 1989 Tim Burton Batman.
That one.
Yeah. And this movie brings a lot to the table. And we're going to get into that in some degree, but I guess it's most famous for really just kind of, launching. It's probably the most influential comic book movie ever made, superhero movie ever made by a long shot. Everybody's take on Batman before this was, as you mentioned, the campy 60s Adam West version, which was fun. Everybody our age has seen that as a kid, and that's what we associate with Batman, or the Justice League cartoons on Saturday mornings, when they used to have cartoons on Saturday mornings. But we got introduced to this dark and moody atmospheric world that has basically set the tone for the modern cinema experience is this version of film. So but it wasn't without its own cost. It took a while to get this movie made, and I guess we'll just get right into it. So, as I mentioned, it was released on June 23rd, 1989. It was directed by Tim Burton, written by Sam Hamm and Warren Scarron. Warren Scarron is the previous previously worked with Tim Burton on Beetlejuice. He wrote Beetlejuice. There was a carousel of writers on this thing, and they were basically writing the movie all the way through the end.
Was Beetlejuice was a year or 2 years before Batman came out?
The year before.
88?
Yeah,
Okay.
the year before.
Okay. I remember I saw Beetlejuice 3 times in the theater, but I couldn't place when was that?
Yeah.
It was a great movie.
Right. So I remember the first time I saw this, I was working as a movie usher of all things in 1989 at a 8 theater multiplex. And one of the great things about being an usher back when they used to exist, when you had to help people find their seats, now it's all pre-programmed and you have an assigned seat and all that. But back then you had to literally usher people in. And one of the things that we had to do during this job was you had to, the film prints would come in on Tuesday nights. And there were these giant cans that weighed like at least 100 pounds. And there's like 7 or 8 of them that the projectionist used to have to splice together and, cut and paste them in there. And I was excited being at this theater. I thought, okay, we're going to get Batman. That's going to be awesome. And this was a very busy summer. We talked in our past episodes about how competitive the movie landscape used to be back then. When this movie came out, the other movies that were in the theater were Earth Girls Are Easy, one of our favorites, as we talked about. Star Trek V, Ghostbusters 2, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Roadhouse, Dead Poet Society, and the Hulk Hogan classic No Holds Barred. Which I think might be the gem out of all those. But
yes, that's unpolished gem of all those. That's the one movie I didn't see out of that list, and I feel so empty without seeing that in '89.
But it gets better because the distribution was very weird back then. Certain theaters got certain films, so I was sure that my theater was going to get Batman. I was so excited when that shipment came in. I wanted to peel back and see that Batman logo on the tin of the casing of the film. And you want to know what it was, Mike? What movie we got instead? Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Another summer blockbuster.
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Mike. And it came complete with this giant cardboard cutout. The ones they have as promotional material.
Yeah.
So
did it have Rick Moranis with his magnifying glass?
No, it was basically a big pair of red baby pants and a 2-scale Rick Moranis. Yeah. But I had to suffer the injustice of not only getting that movie in my theater, but also having to put this stupid diorama together. But anyway, I did end up seeing it at a better theater, a dedicated single theater with a bigger screen, and it was just amazing. How about you, Mike? You remember your first time you saw this one?
Yes, this is vivid for me because it was at our multiplex, our Cinema 6 here in town, and it was the only multiplex we had since the mini cinema, which had karate movies, but that's another story. Cinema 6 was open the year before and had Platoon, which was, oh my gosh, that was so great. And then this movie came out the summer. This was the first big summer movie to come to Rock Hill. It was in the newspaper, and you got to imagine this is not a big town, but for us to get this movie, oh my gosh, it was crazy. And we were going for a whole gang. I worked at Carowinds Amusement Park, and there was 6 or 7 of us that went and go see it. And I remember a huge line. I just remember being blown away that there could be a line for a movie because, when I watched the Star Wars movies, it was probably a week or 2 after they came out, but we saw this one the night of, and it was just an event.
Yeah.
And fantastic. That really, and when you see it with a bunch of guys like that, and it kind of enhances the experience of it too. And like you say, this was the first, I remember it was so big because this was the first comic book movie since, I'm not going to count Superman 3 and 4, but since Superman 2 that I could generally say, wow, this is going to be really good, as far as a non-Golden Globus kind of movie,
Right.
Well, I'm not going to talk about Captain America that's another podcast.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, we need to get into that at some point, but I think it might be a little too obscure for the main audience, the casual audience.
Right. I understand.
But it's funny how you mentioned the rollout. Seeing these things. Even when you mentioned Star Wars, I remember when we're of a rare age where we saw the original Star Wars as kids in the theater. And not a lot of current movie files can say that. But I remember seeing it 3 or 4 months after this May release. Movies like that, even back then, had this kind of staggered rollout, and it really was regional. And you mentioned, here in suburban Charlotte, where we are, for me, it was a little bit better in the Chicago area. But, a lot of these movies, we didn't even think about having those today. You have these massive releases now, but at least domestically.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, since you work in the theater, but when did they start making movies and showing them in multiple cinemas? Like, was this a Batman? Did this happen for this movie, or was that post '89?
It was right around that time. I mean, most theaters in the country in the mid to late '80s were single or double house theaters, and it really that's a great segue, Mike. Good co-host.
Thank you.
But I think what it really started to transition was, we talked about all the competition for movies back then, and in this podcast host's humble opinion, movies are more now about how to make money as opposed to how to make good movies. People make anything now because people go see it. But that list of movies that we talked about that were concurrent with the release of Batman, I mean, to have that kind of competition, it was just more about marketing events. We talked a little bit on our last episode about Independence Day. And the movie wasn't that great, but they knew people were going to go see it, and that's kind of the modern concept of releasing movies. But they actually, competing studios look at each other's release schedules and make sure that,
not that weekend.
Yeah, no, it's got nothing to do with the quality of the film, or, we want, it's a box office hit. We can't afford that, because I guess you think that the movie should hold up on its own merit, but there you go. Not really.
Not quite.
So, okay. So that's kind of where we are. We're in 1989. Another interesting thing that this movie kind of introduced to the world is the fanboy backlash. And this is to some degree even more intense than it is now with your YouTubes and your blogs and your personal takes on everything. Right, now if a movie doesn't match what some fanboys fan fiction is in their brain, it sucks. It's a complete cinematic failure. And but back then, when they initially cast Michael Keaton as Batman, the studio got 50,000 letters, hate mail, saying no, you can't. There's no way you can't do letters. That. And not blog posts or Reddit posts. I'm talking about somebody put pen to paper and wrote a letter and mailed it. That's how much they were. But it's interesting how that phenomenon started.
Quick question: was Michael Keaton kind of a package deal with Tim Burton since they successfully done Beetlejuice?
No, it just helped seal the deal a little bit. The one of the producers, John Peters, who, if anybody has seen the documentary about the failed Tim Burton Superman Returns project, this John Peters is historically one of the probably most, pardon my language, douchey Hollywood producers ever. He always had weird visions of what he wanted in movies, and it's very, he had a take on that, and he thought he saw Michael Keaton in Clean and Sober, where he played this dark, tortured soul coming out of post alcohol.
Oh my gosh!
They wanted to kind of take that route with it, as opposed
where
to
most people knew him from Mr. Mom, or
what
was the Ron Howard Carr movie he did, like
Gung Ho.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great movie. Yeah.
Or Night Shift. You think of those movies, you think, he's a comic actor,
Yeah. So speaking of Michael Keaton, you'll get to the cast here in a minute, but every square-jawed Hollywood actor was considered for this role, including like Mel Gibson, Kevin Costner. But he got the role because they went a different direction. But it really triggered this kind of backlash. But let's go through the cast, Mike. What do you got? Yeah,
we got Michael Keaton, like you say. I knew him I love the movie Night Shift. That was one of my favorite flicks, and obviously, Gung Ho, Mr. Mom, Beetlejuice. This is a comic actor.
Yeah.
Kim Basinger. Everyone knows Kim. Well, she's been a little quiet in the last few years, but everyone knows her as Mrs. Alec Baldwin, her ex. I remember about the time of this movie, she bought a town in Georgia, Brazelton, Georgia.
That's right.
It was kind of near where I was going to school, and I was thinking that's pretty wild, you know.
A
Loved her.
premise later copied in Schitt's Creek, the show
That's
Schitt's Creek.
oh, cool.
Yeah.
And then I loved her in LA Confidential, but this
Oscar
movie,
win.
yes,
Yeah.
this movie, nah.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah.
Jack Nicholson, everybody knows Jack Nicholson. I think this is the perfect role for him. Reminding me of him in Witches of Eastwick, which is kind of an obscure movie, maybe, but it was around the same time, maybe a year before or after this one.
Yeah.
And the dentist from Little Shop of Horrors, Roger Corman, great. Billy D. Williams, who I didn't think got enough screen time in this movie.
Nope.
I was really disappointed. I had a bigger memory of him being in this movie. I don't know why, just maybe his image of like, oh wow, it's Lando.
Yeah.
You know, because who knew him? The only other reason you would know him is maybe from Schlitz Malt Liquor Bull ads, you know, smooth.
Mahogany.
Well, there you go. You would know him from Schlitz. Pat Hingle. He plays Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah.
I always knew him from westerns. You know, he seemed like he was in like every other Clint Eastwood movie. It seemed like
great character actor, sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Jack Palance. Everyone knows him from maybe I'm gonna say Ripley's Believe It or Not. That's what I knew him from. So you know, believe it.
I loved his line at I think it was the '92 Oscars when he's when he won his award for I think City Slickers, and
right.
I think Billy Crystal made the mistake of kind of roasting him as he introduced him.
Right.
And Jack Palance just gets up there and goes, Billy Crystal, I crap bigger than him.
Yeah. See, I don't even remember. I remember the one-arm push-ups he did on stage.
I completely forgot about that.
It was really proving his youth, I guess, you know. And the couple side characters, we had Robert Wool, which he had a bigger role than I thought in this movie, is Knox, the reporter.
Yeah.
I remembered him from Bull Durham, which love that role.
Oh, yeah. That scene on the mound where they're talking about birthday gifts to get.
Yes.
Yeah.
He was awesome.
Yeah,
and Jerry Hall, ex Mrs. Jagger.
Yeah.
Who, again, I thought had a bigger role. It's kind of those Bill D. Williams things. I thought,
yeah.
Didn't I remember more of her? But then when I rewatched this, I'm like, wow, she really didn't add much to this movie.
No, just kind of a wasted character, really, if you think about it.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So yeah, that's impressive cast. Yeah.
And I can't forget the he's not really the part of the cast, but his music is Danny Elfman. So I know you're gonna probably mention that. But
he I think he is a presence in the film. I think
he is almost as big a character as Gotham City, you know, in this movie, as far as just in making an impression.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple interesting notes about the cast. You know, we mentioned that everybody in Hollywood was trying to play that role. The Joker story is funny too, because apparently Robin Williams was the guy that actually gave him the job, but it was only as bait to get Jack Nicholson to do it, because Jack Nicholson was on the fence. So they really kind of screwed Robin Williams over to the point where he refused to do any Warner Brothers films until he apologized for it. But he would have been great in that role too, in hindsight. This movie really kind of made Tim Burton a household name, because Jack Nicholson, but gets top billing, which I thought was interesting too.
Yeah, I noticed that last on the cast listings. Like, oh yeah, there he is. Pop.
Yeah, and he and his agent really manufactured a fantastic deal. This is kind of the first really notable one where he worked points on the back end, where he got a $6 million salary, but he negotiated a profit sharing.
Brilliant.
So he ended up pulling in like 60 million, which in today's dollars is just ridiculous. But yeah, and he also had a couple other weird writers too, where he wrote in things in the contract where he was allowed to watch home Laker games. He could leave and go watch those games because of course he did.
Because this was I noticed this was filmed at Pinewood in England.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
You
had really, I didn't see any English, in the cast except for Alfred. But it was just interesting, the placement of where they actually filmed this.
Yeah, it was a really hectic shoot too. It was only a little under 3 months. So, and most of it was just done on the fly, mostly improvised. At the time, it had like a $35 million budget, which at 1989 was the third highest budget of all time, which was interesting. But it was only a 3-month shoot. But they had released. We talked about Michael Keaton and the trepidation by the fan base about him being there. They were so nervous about it that they put together this roughly cut together trailer And I remember seeing this trailer. It's if you can see it on YouTube, but it's just a collection of like there's no music and it's just like cut together scenes.
Wow.
It starts out with the Batmobile, and that just fired everybody up, you know. But this was another example, another cultural phenomenon where people would go see a movie just to see the trailer and then walk out, like they did with the Phantom Menace, for example. But people would go see Tequila Sunrise, the movie with Michelle Pfeiffer and Mel Gibson, I think, and because they heard that this trailer was attached to it, because there was so much secrecy about it, and everybody was killing to get anything about this movie, what the Batman looked like or whatever. But yeah, that scene with the Batmobile, that was all people needed, and they said, "Okay, we'll take your word for it." David Copperfield bought that Batmobile originally, by the way, if you're curious.
Unfortunately,
yeah. So anyway, we'll so they went through all this revolving casts and revolving screenwriters, and I think Ivan Reitman was going to direct this originally because they were going to, but he backed out. But they got Tim Burton in the summer of October 1987. They started filming this together. And what we got was the I guess the most influential comic book movie ever, that elements of even today are still lifted. So let's go through it.
All right.
So it kind of opens up on the establishing shots, Gotham, and you can see right away the production and art design is just phenomenal. It's really immersive. And they do this great misdirect where they have it opens over Gotham. They cut down to the city streets, and you see this family with a young son.
Yeah.
And you think, oh boy, they're going to do an origin story here. But this family kind of goes down. They're trying to get a cab after a show. And they go down this this dark alley, and of course they get mugged. But it's not Bruce Wayne's family, just this random tourist family.
Right.
And we get introduced to this the Batman looking all Bela Lugosi, really, which I thought was kind of cool. Yeah, you get that classic phrase.
Oh yeah.
He holds, and that was improvised, I think. Michael Keaton said, "I'm just going to throw this in here. What are you?" And I think his original thing was something like "I'm Vengeance," like the most recent one.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But he said, "I'm Batman." So, and of course, everybody's been saying, "I'm Batman."
I'm Batman. Yeah.
For the rest of their lives,
Yeah.
But another thing, this just kind of put me off here already. I think all of Tim Burton's movies do this. He loves to do these long, drawn out credit scenes. The opening credits to all his movies are just that. You got to sit through 2-3 minutes of.
Even though with the music, it seemed like the same opening for Beetlejuice, except for instead of descending down into the town.
Yeah, like opening march type thing.
Yeah, they go through the logo of the bat, symbol, and it's like you say, it seemed like at least kind of drawn out, and dun, 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 which is kind of cool. Adds to the drama.
Yeah, I guess, but usually, especially people that are going to see this, were whipped up in this fanboy frenzy. They just have to sit and it's probably just exacerbated by that. But so anyway, he comes down and takes out these scabby faced everybody, all the goons of Batman have horrible skin.
The makeup in this movie, it was like like everybody had jaundice or something. It was really unsettling.
Yeah, Gotham's got some serious dermatology issues, I'm sure. But they kind of established, this is how it's going to look, everybody. So, and then they cut to a scene where they get this Ed Koch looking mayor talking about trying to get this it's a little kind of an exposition thing where they talk about the state of Gotham politics and the state of Gotham crime. And you get introduced to Harvey Dent, as you mentioned, and Commissioner Gordon. And then simultaneously they kind of cut to the mob element of concurrent mob element, which you got the current mob boss Jack Palance, and is the guy, and he's dating Jerry Hall, because those guys go to match made in heaven there. And then you got Jack Nicholson playing Jack Napier, who's his underboss that really everybody's really afraid of. But they kind of established there that there's this inner workings between the mob. You feel like there's going to be some sort of revolution or some upheaval in the mob. And we also get brief glimpses of the Gotham newspaper, where we get introduced to
this movie, that first hit me. I didn't notice it the first viewing, but watching it again, you notice how much of a 40s and 50s kind of vibe it had with the gang, like gangland, and the language they used, and even that, when you go into the newsroom, like you're saying, it's like, whoa, this is like something from the 40s,
Yeah,
like, hey.
it had like a 30s film noir
And
type thing to
even the police uniforms were straight out of, like, I guess that's the thing. I guess it was supposed to be lifted almost from like a Bob Kane page,
I
same look.
I did like the police uniforms, those heavy black leather, straight old school Chicago things. Those are cool. But yeah, we kind of establish, they want to have this bicentennial party to try to bring business back to Gotham, and the mob guys have their own ideas. And then about 20 minutes or so in, we finally visit spacious Wayne Manor, where he's holding a fundraiser to have this bicentennial celebration actually make it happen. And then as they're doing that, we kind of cut back to the mob guys, where Jack Palance develops this plan to set up Jack Nicholson at this Axis Chemical. So it's kind of a setup there. And so Jack goes to steal all this company information and close it out. But by the time he gets there, everybody's gone and the police have been called. So it's, been this big setup.
It's a setup. And
then we get this wonderful 30s gangster shootout, which I thought was funny because it was Keystone Cop stuff. You had the standard sound effects for every gun,
pew, pew, pew.
Yeah, and then the ricochets but it was straight out like Jimmy Cagney. And somehow Batman gets tipped off this, and he kind of jumps in and catches Jack Nicholson and confronts him. And of course, Jack's so cool. He just nice outfit. That's his first line to Batman. But they have a go at it, and they're fighting, and Jack shoots at the Batman. It kind of ricochets, and the bullet kind of hits him in the face and kind of disfigures him. And in his pain, he kind of stumbles over the, I guess, ocean non-compliant rail.
Gotta have a railing.
And he gets dropped into this vat of chemicals that turns him into Krusty the Clown.
Yes.
But yeah, we talk. I love to explore TV tropes or film tropes. The industrial factories never have never have a second shift. They just leave the lights on. Vacant. They always leave.
After 5 o'clock, just leave.
Yeah, no one's there. You think you'd have a janitor or a second shift foreman or somebody, but no, they got free reign to shoot and kill. But so the assumption is that Jack dies in the vat of acid, but of course the green hand comes out. So he wants to show you the hand, but I'd put my face out first if I was under. But we get to see the cool, Joker hand.
It's a cool effect, yeah.
And the deck of cards, in the water. That's kind of cool.
Yes.
And then we get to the next scene where he finds his way out and has this quick back alley surgery done. And this is really kind of a cool, iconic scene where he's sitting in the chair, and he wants the mirror. Show me that he wants the mirror to see what I did. And he's got this sad little, Eastern European doctor that's apologizing for what he did.
That's all I could do.
But there's actually an element of genuine creepiness there, where he starts to lose his stuff, and we get that first, hear of this weird cackle, which I thought was very atmospheric and very, very cool. It really kind of established him as a psychopath, and this isn't going to be Cesar Romero anymore. It's going to be something scary. And he takes that rage and comes back to mob headquarters and confronts Jack Palance. And I thought another iconic look was that when he goes into the office there, and he's the way he's lit, you can just barely see the face. And he kind of comes into frame, and you see the reveal of what he looks like as the Joker, and he just kind of murders Jack. It takes great joy in doing it, which I thought was fantastic. Yeah. Speaking of the way it was lit, I mean, interesting fact about this movie that I've read several sources, that the theater goers complained that this movie was too dark, and not in tone, but in actual, like, they couldn't see what was going on.
Yeah.
And this has been a pet peeve of mine, certainly recently. I don't know if it's just a lost art of how to light a scene, but or if it's a cop out that film directors use. But
Well, look at how many scenes of this movie were at night. You know,
yeah,
there's probably 2 scenes that had daytime. You look at any of the city scenes, which I have some problems with the city scenes, by the way.
yeah,
But that's more or less, it was just, claustrophobic. But I always hear that if they do this stuff in the night or darkness, they, you see less flaws, or there's less work that has to be done to, give you a realistic kind of setting.
and I think that's what bothers me the most, because like even in modern stuff, I think the most famous example is the Game of Thrones penultimate episode, where the whole thing was shot so dark the fan base could not see what was happening. And their excuse was, well, we wanted to capture the chaos of the scene. And it's like, no, learn how to light a scene. And another great one is, it's a touchy subject. The Walking Dead. If anybody remembers that show that's still on, that show is shot so dark. There are critical plot points that the fan base that watches every week missed because they shot the scenes so dark. I just don't understand why all these. Anyway,
another podcast.
Again, another digression into one of our podcasts. But so he kills Jack Palance and takes over, and you have this wonderful meeting with all the gangsters, which is kind of reminiscent of what was done in the Untouchables and like the Godfather movies, where you have all these grease balls around the thugs around this giant table.
5 families.
Yeah. And Jack fits the one guy that doesn't want to comply, and he gives him a little electric hand buzzer and kind of fries him up, which leads to a really weird post-mortem scene where he's just talking to the corpse, establishing how bonkers he's gone.
This movie, it was a lot more violent than I remember. And going back to your Cesar Romero reference, I remember him coming out when this movie was out and being appalled by the violence that the Joker displayed, and he said, "That's not my, that wasn't my Joker," that kind of thing. I remember, I specifically remember that in the news when this came out, and I was like, "Wow, okay."
Yeah."
But it is obviously, as Tim Burton says, has that kind of Sleepy Hollow kind of violence, that it's comical slash, pretty gruesome ends for some of these people. It's kind of interesting. But like I said, it's it's not comic violence like you saw in Adam West's Batman. It's more, a little bit more realistic.
Yeah, he kind of wince a few times there for sure.
Yeah, pretty much.
So then I guess this is kind of where, the first acts usually for these kind of movies is pretty easy. And then when you get into the second and third acts, the third act is historically screwy for this movie. But the second act, where everything kind of turns, this is where I guess going back now looking at it, I'm kind of not really understanding why anything really happened. My only take is, why does the Joker do anything he does? He decides he wants to. He goes this weird thing where he invents this Smilex chemical and wants to turn all the people in Gotham into him.
Why? Yeah. He makes the after he kills Jack Palance's character.
Yeah.
He makes that quote, "This city needs an enema," which I found fascinating. I'm like, well, why? What did it? I know he looks at the front of the paper or something and sees the story there about. I don't know. I'm not even sure what drove him to like you say, do the cosmetics, rigging to kill people.
This is where the movie just, in my opinion, just kind of.
I know he's he's the Joker. He's a crazy person, so you're not supposed to question this. But
your antagonist typically needs some sort of like goal or why he's doing what he's doing, and I could never really piece that together. And the rest of the movie kind of suffers from that discontinuity, I guess, if that's even a word. But it's just kind of, the only thing I can think of is that it's an ego thing. I think the Joker's aggravated that Batman gets better press.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it. Yeah, I think he's trying to push Batman off the headlines. I don't.
Yeah, but again, that's kind of where this movie kind of goes off the rails a little bit. So he does all this weird stuff with the chemicals, so people can't use hairspray or makeup. So and then he kidnaps Vicky Vale a couple times. And the one scene that I just really groaned about is in the museum where he
I have it right here. What was it?
You have thoughts.
Art museum scene dash pure cringe.
And again, it's going to sound sacrilegious, but I don't think Prince was the right thing for this movie.
Let me turn the page here. Prince, not appropriate with Danny Elfman soundtrack. What I meant by that is it didn't mash with the Danny Elfman soundtrack. It was only a couple of songs. You had Trust and Party Man, which okay.
How do you know? How do you know?
It's on a boombox, But I mean, it just.
If you look those up, we're no longer friends.
No, I didn't. They're on the credits, and I remember. Okay. I remember this when I first saw it, and because I have a lot of Prince stuff. I have, yeah. I even have the Dirty Mind CD, which was his first. But this was just it's
so out of place.
Out of place is the perfect way to put it. It just was like it dated it for me. If you want to have a soundtrack that's what made me mad about Twister was all the Van Halen stuff that was inserted into a soundtrack that could have been timeless in a way. I put that in quotes.
Was it "Respect the Wind," Mike? Was that the song?
That's right.
You called that out, and I didn't give you.
That's all right. That's okay. I got music ADD. It's always bothering me. This one, like I said, when the museum scene, like you were saying, or he comes in and he's got the boom box and he's playing Trust and not Trust, sorry, Party Man. And it's like really,
and it goes on. Not only it goes on way too long. We're talking like over 2 minutes. And it's like it just.
And as a side note, Gilbert Stuart's George Washington painting and the Blue Boy are not in the same museum. So just throw that out there.
In Gotham.
Gotham. I know it's Gotham. I get it.
Yeah, and again, I'm with you. And you know who else was with us? Tim Burton. He did not want Prince, and he felt he didn't want it at all. This is the John Peters and the other producers that they wanted to push this.
Okay.
They originally wanted Michael Jackson, but Michael Jackson didn't do it. They got Prince. So, but again, Prince has never been my cup of tea, but I appreciate him as a genius musician and prolific one. But
what do you think about the closing credits song where he was singing called "Scandalous"? I mean, I
couldn't stick around for it. I'd had enough of Prince by then.
I didn't think it really fit the movie. I was like, it was kind of weird placement.
It literally should have been something gothic, as in Gotham. The tone just did not work. Right. But yeah, so you get this long scene where Jack's and his white boys are dancing to Prince, and they don't stop.
There was an Asian guy.
Okay, sorry. And then of course Batman comes in to save the day, and he grabs Vicky Vale, and Vicky Vale is just there to be rescued a lot of the times. Damsel in distress.
She screamed more than Kate Capshaw in the Temple of Doom.
Oh, come on now. That's
yeah, come on.
But yeah, so he continues, Batman solves the riddle of the Smilex thing, so he gets Jack even madder. And then in a desperate attempt to be on the front page, the Joker decides, he's going to invite everybody down. They cancel the bicentennial because of obvious reasons, right? But then Jack comes in the feed. And this was a horrible scene, by the way. Jack interrupts the video feed and tells Gotham that we're going to have it. I'm going to pay for it, and I'm going to give away $20 million. And if you notice, like the people at the lectern at City Hall are staring to the left.
I was about to ask you that. What are they looking at?
They're doing a split screen, but what are they looking at? it's like they're watching the movie. But anyway, that didn't make any sense. But yeah, so of course the people of Gotham, you say, yeah, we'll come down and hang out with this green freak that tried to kill us. But yeah, no problem, because he's giving away money. And here they try to dance around they tell the origin story. I will give this movie credit, and they tell the origin story in flashback, which note to the Marvel universe, you can do this now. It's okay. No one needs to see an origin story.
It's a whole movie.
If in your first 30 minutes of your film, no one needs to see that. Even when you reboot them, you can go ahead and tell these in flashback. We'll allow it. But they do that very clever. But at a certain point where Batman's had enough of the Joker, so he goes to Axis Chemicals and he blows that up, and he
kills. I was surprised he killed people.
Yeah,
and I know they were just goons, but still, I was kind of shocked that he dropped the bombs there right at their feet. Well, that surprised me.
Goons are people too, like
exactly.
Even if with bad skin.
And Superman has that rule,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure about Batman and his original incarnations in the comics and whatnot. If he was like, beat him up, arrest him, but no killing kind of guy. That confused me a bit.
Well, they're kind of fodder, but yeah.
All right.
So so Batman gets aggravated because he when he does his flashback, he has this when he sees the Joker. The Joker says, have you ever seen the devil in the pale moonlight? And that phrase he remembers from his childhood when his parents were killed. And he really puts together that the Joker is the guy that killed his parents. Yeah. So now it's personal right now. So, we get the cool, again, psych out scene where he puts on the cowl and buckles up the belt and puts all his gadgets together, and he goes down and takes out. Yes. So as he's blowing up the Axis Chemical, the bicentennial is going on at the same time. So apparently he picked the wrong place to go to first. But again, another way too long Prince song. And you notice there's like no interaction between the goons and the parade goers. He's just talking to nobody. He's just talking to nobody.
Right.
Not eliciting any response.
I noticed it was the most orderly grabbing of money I've ever seen. And not that I've seen that in person, but I would imagine if you're throwing out wads of cash to people, they wouldn't just be, I don't know, just kind of chucking and driving to the music and just picking up one bill at a time. I was like, really?
Yeah.
And it was a surprisingly low turnout for somebody dropping $27 million in cash.
Yeah. But I out of morbid curiosity, nothing else, I watched very closely in freeze frame to see these were like real money. And if you look, there's a couple scenes where it's got their Shroot bucks. They've got the Joker's face on them. So he's got his plan works perfectly, and he gets everybody to one location. Then he starts releasing these inflatable balloons, these Macy's Christmas parade style balloons. Starts releasing this toxic gas and trying to kill the crowd. Nothing says bicentennial more than a big baby, one-tooth baby balloon. I couldn't understand that. But Batman comes in on the Batwing, and of course there's a gadget. There's an app for that to gather up all the cables and take them out of Gotham.
Like a scissors thing right in the front. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. So Joker gets mad because Batman took his balloons. Yeah, that's I summarized.
That was the last straw. That was
I summarized it that way because it's real. And he shoots his guy Bob, who to the keen eye will know Bob was Larry with the Daryl and Daryl.
That was from the New Show. Okay,
yeah, the New Show.
I thought he looked familiar. I wasn't totally sure. And
yeah. So he Daryl and his other brother Daryl lost their brother that day.
Oh no.
Yeah. And then we had the big showdown where Batman's flying into Gotham, and there's this big standoff, and Jack's sitting in the middle of the street. And hey, Christopher Nolan, did you pay royalties for this? Because in, I think, The Dark Knight, it's exactly the same thing with Heath Ledger in the middle of the street. but this time Batman's on a motorcycle. But it's this epic standoff where the Joker's, come on, kill me, whatever you need to do, just come at me. But it was completely listed in the Dark Knight. But anyway, he pulls this giant revolver with this 4-foot long barrel out of his pants and shoots Batman out of the sky. And this is where you can kind of see the special effects, some of the gaps. You can see their models. I mean, we're talking like, Toyo Japanese.
It was very reminiscent of that, especially with the burning cars. It was like, wow,
yeah,
it looks
you can
like
tell
a Matchbox there.
Yeah. But it's 1989. But
okay.
But anyway, and then like I mentioned, the third act is this weird thing, and even the actors and the screenwriters didn't know what they're going to do. They knew they're going to go up to the top of this cathedral. They're going to send to this cathedral. And Vicky Vale, Kim Basinger, claims that she wrote the third act with John Peters, this creepy little producer. She wanted to be part of it. And they played this weird misplaced music as they ascended.
Beautiful Dreamer song.
Yeah.
Coming up
and the waltzes and the dancing.
Yeah.
So he the Joker arranges for a helicopter to pick him up on top of this cathedral, and he takes Vicky Vale with her, and then Batman follows up there, and he takes out a couple more extra goons at the top. And
I was going to say, speaking of paying royalties, there were a couple of scenes there where Batman faces down a foe that either has 2 scimitars or 2 swords and like swinging them around. Yeah. And one scene, Batman just punches him. And it's like, okay, what?
Yeah. And that was
like look fairly reminiscent of a movie I saw with Harrison Ford, possibly.
Yeah, there's a stunning lack of action in this action movie. That scene where he's fighting that guy with the dual blades, that was kind of cool. Yeah. But again, it lasted 8 seconds and ended with him punching the guy.
Right.
Okay.
And he faces another guy up in the tower.
Yeah.
The same kind of thing. Then he pulls out some kind of piece of equipment and just punches him in the chest. Like, what was that?
Well, they just got to get to Jack again, doing hamming for the camera so much. But anyway, they get up on the top, and they get flung over the side, and they're hanging on for dear life. And the helicopter comes, and Batman finds a gadget that attaches the Joker's leg to this gargoyle, and the gargoyle that Batman hangs onto was strong enough, but the gargoyle that the Joker has is, of course, comes right off. And then he can't hold his weight while he's hanging onto the rope ladder from the helicopter with this thing attached to his leg, and the Joker falls to his death, and the movie is over. So you think. Yeah. But it was kind of a kind of operatic ending, I guess you'd call it. But they do a little, epilogue with Gotham where they thank Batman and how he's no longer, he doesn't have the stigma in the other Batman movies where he's this like vigilante that no one trusts. He's like their hero, and they give out the bat signal, and they had this epic shot of Batman,
and that
silhouetted on the
right.
But
I appreciate the ending that wasn't a anti-hero kind of ending. It was more,
right.
It felt very comic book like, and I appreciated that ending.
So that it was a huge critical and fan hit. It made $251 million, and in today's dollars, adjusted for inflation, that's like 576 million. So it was a big. It actually sold more tickets than the Dark Knight Batman, decades later. So it was a big cultural event. It spawned several horrible sequels. A couple of them by Joel Schumacher, which we could dedicate an entire series to on his work. Fantastic. But we won't do that today. But yeah, it's you can't read or you can't reference or read anything about this thing anymore without there's a generational bias now with this movie, because everybody's talking about the Nolan Batmans, and those are great. Those are great trilogies, but there's a generation that's all they know of. So anything else other than that is going to, this movie's going to suck. It doesn't have a chance. But it's an interesting. We talked about some of the things that this movie kind of came out, the fanboy wrath and the being one, and the.
But nobody complained about the race swap to Harvey Dent.
Right, yeah. what I think is interesting other aspect of this movie is that it kind of flushes out again, kind of going back to our original point about the sophomore jinxes. Fans tend to love what they deride. They come around. Everybody now, most polls, you'll say that Michael Keaton was the best Batman, which I think is just fantastic. They're actually he's going to reprise his role in the Flash TV series as Bruce Wayne. But you can look at like the Star Wars trilogy comes to mind. The sequel, the prequels trilogy. How George Lucas raped my childhood. That crowd, they've come around to those Phantom Menace and movies, and it's just the hater troll nations that we've kind of proliferated. It's just an interesting dynamic. So this movie won. It did win an Oscar for the set design, but that's it.
Why no? Well, I was going to say Oscar for music, but
no.
Maybe they saw the Prince and
maybe they got onto it. Yeah. but it was one of those things where you think it would have won more for being as groundbreaking as it was, but it really just the production design, the set designer.
Yeah. It's funny now that I've seen other Batman movies. Now I'm watching this one. Okay, there were a couple of neat scenes of Gotham City. It's kind of an Art Deco on steroids kind of setting, and it's cool. It really is neat. I know at the time this was really revolutionary. Now looking back on it, I'm like, wow, how many times am I going to see the Monarch Theater or the front steps of City Hall? I mean, they had more screen time than Billy D. Williams did.
Well, that's what you were saying earlier. I think the principal characters of this movie are the production design, which is a guy named Anton Furst was the guy that designed all these sets, and oddly enough, he committed suicide a couple of years after this. He's just this dark and brooding guy, and just didn't like he just tortured soul, and I guess that kind of came through in his art. But his work, and again, the other character in this is Danny Elfman's soundtrack. I mean, that's the only those are the two things you really like about this movie: the atmospheric tone that are set by these two guys. Danny Elfman didn't win any. How did he not win an Oscar for original score? But yeah, that Batman march is still. I mean, you hear that sound; it's synonymous even today. But anyway, everybody went crazy for it, and it's spawned 30 years worth of copycat cinema that we're here to still talking about today. So fun stuff, right, Mike?
Right, and it, like I say, I had mixed feelings after watching it again, thinking, wow, this movie really wasn't as good as I thought it was at the time. But it's kind of a bridge movie now that you look at it. I thought more about it. I was thinking, okay, well, I don't know if you saw the Adam West Batman movie in the 60s. It was pure camp.
Batman the movie.
Yeah, pure camp, but a little bit of the comic book. Obviously, had
the sharks.
Right.
When he's on the rope ladder with the sharks on.
Pure camp. Then you get Tim Burton's Batman from '89, which is what we're reviewing here. And to me, it's a natural middle piece to going from Adam West movie to the one most people just saw with Robert Pattinson in it, which is almost pure film noir.
Right.
And I feel like the Tim Burton movie is like the camp with the Joker, obviously, and the balloons and the silliness. And then film noir with the set design, the music, the darkness, a little bit of edginess to it. And it kind of has a place now that you look back, 50 plus years from now. It kind of fits.
So you've already kind of done it. So what's your grump rating going in and going out, Mike?
Like I said, the experience was fantastic when I was 18 years old watching this. 4 stars when I saw it. Watching it now, I can appreciate its place now and how it spawned other ideas for superhero movies, but 2.5 maybe. And like I said, a lot of that is. Well, I could probably list a couple of cons here. What did I not like about this? I don't know. I have little things I liked about it. I love the gadgetry. I love that Batman uses Batarang.
Always
His
good.
cape, the use of his cape, especially when he swoops it over Vicky Vale to knock her out. I love that. Just little touches like that were great. But
Yep.
the overall feel of the movie, like you said, Joker's motives. I look back at it, and even the CGI. We noticed a flaw last night watching it where you could see the hand in the Batmobile when it was supposed to be driving by itself. It was like really obvious. I don't know how that was missed in post.
It's the bad hand.
Yeah. And the CGI, which is very dated. Like there was an overhead shot of the Batman shadow kind of walking by. I was like, okay.
I think that's straight up animation. I don't think they had CGI.
Yeah, it was. It reminded me of the Ghost in the movie Ghost,
Yeah.
And even the shields coming up on the Batmobile were, I look at it now. It's like, oh,
it's stop motion. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hokey now, but back then it's like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So it's the grumpy nostalgia. Look back and like say, well, maybe it wasn't that sharp a movie as I remember. And like I said, that's what I'm kind of saying is
I'm shot for shot with you. This was a seminal moment in my teenage years to see this movie, and it just kind of stuck with me. But I realized I hadn't seen this thing in its entirety for probably like 20 years.
Oh yeah.
But watching it, it's weird. I have the same criticism that Tim Burton himself said. He said, I found the movie kind of boring. It's quote unquote. It's more of a cultural phenomenon than a good movie. And Tim Burton said that himself about this. And I kind of felt
right
the same way. It's just, it's cool to look at, and it had its elements, but it just did,
another pro I had was the fact that it's assumed obviously, but you don't know Bruce Wayne is Batman till I wrote it down, an hour and 18 minutes in. And then they finally show him in his cave looking on the computer. You're like, wow, wait a sec. Bruce Wayne is Batman. I mean, obvious, but it's kind of neat the way they, it was subtle,
right.
Even when Vicky Vale finds out Bruce Wayne is Batman, it's almost felt like a scene was missing there because she just shows up with Alfred. It's like, wait, huh? I thought that was at least I thought that was something the way they were kind of cagey with his reveal in a way,
right? Well, I guess my takeaway is, the saving grace for me is that say what you want, but our generation did everything that the later Batman generations did, but he did it with a perm. So.
And I forgot about the quote where he actually says, if you want to get nuts, let's get nuts. I forgot about that scene totally until I saw it, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's where that comes from, because I've seen that used as a meme so many places. Let's get nuts.
So Mike, I'd like to introduce you to the marketing meetings, because if you'll notice on our social media page, that's the image I use to market this show.
Oh, thank you.
It's called Grumpy Nostalgia, Mike. You want to consider subscribing. As should our audience. Again, if you enjoyed our show and our witty and insightful comments, you can check out more information about our show on this Instagram page, Grumpy Nostalgia, and you can also email us. We'd love to hear from you if you have requests or comments on the show that get us better. We'd love to hear those too. You can email us at nostalgiagrumps@gmail.com. Before we leave,
see, I thought the thumbnail you were going to use was a Vicky Vale picture of Corto Maltese.
I did like when the Joker's looking at her dossier, her portfolio. He goes, crap.
Oh, I like these skulls.
Yeah. Again, another personal reference that I can relate back to people looking through my work and saying it's crap. But
crap.
So before we leave you, we'll kind of go through some of the stuff that were some recommendations of things that we're currently watching or enjoying. I took Mike's advice and started watching the show Severance on Apple, which is fantastic.
Is it?
What I can recommend is there's a show on Hulu that's had its initial run, like the 10 episode season, but it's a show called Reservation Dogs. Not a lot of people know about it, but it's this really hidden gem. I think it's produced by Taika Waititi, everything he does turns to gold. But it's a show about this Native American these teens on an Indian reservation in Oklahoma, and it's just a really kind of poignant, bittersweet, and extremely funny slice of life look at life on the reservation and the mix of modern culture and their obsession with hip hop and how it kind of clashes with their, Indian heritage and Indian tradition. It's just a very, very unique, very clever, original show. So I highly recommend Reservation Dogs on Hulu. Mike, what are you watching now?
Well, besides Bundesliga soccer, there's a guy on YouTube I just started watching, and he's been around a while, but he's Hats Off Entertainment is his site, and he goes through series from the last 50 or 60 years, like mostly TV shows, but he's a real studiophile, which you would appreciate.
Ah, nice.
And he goes through a lot of sitcoms and kind of does like a deep dive into their origin plots, kind of like we're doing some of these, but it's more or less with TV shows and kind of forgotten failure movies and shows. And it's really interesting to me.
Cool.
So I've been enjoying that.
I notice a lot of recommendations are for shows that do our version of our show better than we do. So hey, audience, you don't like what we're doing, go listen to somebody else that does it better.
The more the merrier.
Yeah, that's right. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode.
Wait,
again,
I got one fact.
Hold on.
One factoid.
All right.
Did you know Michael Keaton not only was Batman, but he played in Birdman, and he was the Vulture in the Spider-Man movie. So
He's got kind of a wing fetish there, doesn't he?
Correct. Yes.
Wow.
I thought that was a neat little factoid there. I was just thinking about last night, and then I thought about, well, this is another podcast, but other stars who had been like Ryan Reynolds, been two different superheroes or superhero and a bad guy kind of thing. So
we should flesh that out. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, the lights are going off in the Grumpy Nostalgia Studios, so we've got to call it a night.
Hey, Justin, never rub another man's rhubarb.
Jesus, yeah. Oh, wonderful. I think we're going to leave it with that one, Mike. Again, you can find out any information about our wonderful program on Grumpy Nostalgia on Instagram at Grumpy Nostalgia. And again, the email address is nostalgiagrumps@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. So for Mike James, this is Justin. We want to thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you again next week.